11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Our rest time starts now. Walk around. Right, walk around. Breathe in and out. In and out. Ten more seconds. And hands up. Hands up. Let's go. Last set. 1, 2, 3, and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Well done, your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. So I'm going to demonstrate our next workout in the next few seconds using the tissue paper. Remember, we have 6 tissue papers. Alright, we have 6 tissue papers, but you can use one. I'll demonstrate how you can use one. I'm just using more than one to create that variety. So we are going to go down here, kneel down, come here, come here, come here, pick the weight and jump. Alright, but now if you have more than one, you jump and put it down carefully to allow us get more contraction on our glutes and legs. We're going to do 12 of those. So if you have 6 tissue papers, which means we're going to do that twice, shifting them from this side to this side, right? But if you have 1 tissue paper, you're going to use it, but do that 12 times. So we're going to do 12 of that, times 4. All right, so we're going to shift this tissue all the way to this side, and then bring it back. So you kneel down, get back to a squat position, and then you jump. Are we together? Let's go. Right? Then you put it on the side. Then you go back down, up, as you pick a tissue paper, go there, and 2. The rule of the game is, if you should drop the tissue papers, you'll remain in a squat position. For example, if it goes like that, you'll remain in a squat position and rearrange them back very fast. Alright, so let's go back down. Come back here. Squat, pick the tissue paper, and then put it on the side. When you're ranging any of that, you remain squatting. You go back down, come back to squat position, pick the tissue paper, put it there, then you go back down, keep going, there we go, and there. Remember, that's 6, so we're shifting them back to this side. Alright, we're shifting them back to this side. That's 1. That's 2. That's 3. Move them there. Go back down. That's 4. That's 5. That's 6. Well done. Our rest time starts now. Our rest time starts now. Breathe in and out. In and out. 5 more seconds to go for set number 2. 5 more seconds to go for set number 2. Our time's up. Our time's up. All right, let's go back down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 'Here we go. Keep going, don't go up. Don't go all the way up. Let's maintain the tension. There we go. Down and up. There we go. Down and up. There we go. Don't go up. Take your time. There we go. Perfect. And done. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Our rest time sets now. Our rest time sets now. Look around. That feels good. Right? That feels good. That feels good. All right. Walk around, walk around. Walk around. 10 more seconds. 10 more seconds before we go for the last set of that particular workout. 5 more. 5 more. 1 more. And our time's up. Let's go. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Don't go up. Stay there. 4. There we go. All right. Don't go all the way up. We're just down here. We're just down here. We're just down here. There we go. There we go. Perfect. And well done. Well done, well done. Your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. There we go. Walk around. Walk around. So we go to our next tissue paper workout, which I will also demonstrate using the tissue papers. You can always use one tissue paper. Let me demonstrate how you would do it with one tissue paper if you didn't have 6 pieces like I do. So you go here. If your tissue paper is there and you're here, you do this. Jump here, pick the tissue paper. Jump here, put it down. Jump here, squat. Jump here, pick the tissue paper. You know, and leave it there and jump. Like you make an assumption you're picking tissue paper from each end. But if you have tissue paper, you will pick it from both sides. So you shift all of them to one side and carefully arrange them. The beauty about having it stacked is when it falls down, you have to remain in a squat position to pick it up. All right, let's start here. Picking it, putting it down, picking it. Then we take it back. We have to arrange them back how we found them without going up for rest. So keep moving guys. All right, let's go, let's go. All right, here we go. There we go. Perfect. All right. Our rest time starts now. Our rest time starts now. Walk around. Walk around. Walk around. 2 more sets of that to go. 2 more sets. And time's up. Time's up. All right. Next set. 1, 2, 3, and go. 1. There we go. There we go. Keep going. Don't bend, squat. While picking it, squat. Squat, squat. And there we go. All right. All right. So, our rest time starts now. Oh my goodness. That feels nice. That feels nice. Walk around. Look around, look around. We have 1 more set of that. 1 more set to go. 1 more set to go. 1 more set to go. Our time's up. 1 last set. 1, 2, 3, and move. There we go. Perfect. Let's go. Let's go. Don't stand, don't stand. Yeah, you got that. Perfect. Perfect. Your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. Walk around. Walk around. Oh my goodness, that feels so good. That feels very good. 15 more seconds left. Five more seconds. 5 more seconds. And time's up. Time's up. So, we need to put our tissue paper aside. We've used them for today. Yes, we've used them for today. So we want to use the towel. The towel. Pick your towel. Pick your hand towel in that case. And then just put it together like that. Hold it up. And we're going to do that. That. So make sure you're crunching this place so that you have the side of the back. And then also, so we're going to do 12, then 15. With your legs stiff and straight, we're going to do 15 of these. Arms straight, like that. Arms straight, there we go. Make sure you're feeling your hamstring all the way. So, let's go. 1, 2, 3, and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, keep going, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Well done. Don't take it down. Let the shoulders bend. 1, 2, 3 and move. 1. Legs stiff. 2, 3. Push it all the way back. 4. Remember your hands are stiff straight. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Well done. Your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. Are you feeling the burn like I am? Right. Are you feeling the burn? So we're going to superset that with the bottle. So pick your water bottle. Mine is about 750 ml each. So plus its weight, probably it's around a liter. So we're going to superset that with this. You squat, tap the ground. 1, 2. So we're going to do 20 of those. 1, 2, 3 and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, keep going, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, squat, 18, 19, 20. Well done, well done, well done, well done. So we need to have a rest time. Have a rest time right now. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Perfect. Walk around, walk around, walk around. Before we go back to the towel. Before we go back to the towel. Walk around. All right. That feels good. 15 more seconds to go. 15 more seconds. We are almost there. 15 more seconds. And time's up. Time's up. Time's up. So let's go again. The side ones. 1, 2, 3 and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then we go, oh, don't drop it. I thought we were going to the bottles, but I remembered we had this. Let's go, 1, 2, 3. 1, push it all the way back, legs stiff. 2, 3, 4, make sure you squeeze your back. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well done, well done. Pick the water bottles. 1, 2, 3 and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Well done. Your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. Your rest time starts now. You're doing amazing so far. Well done. Walk around, walk around. You're doing well so far. Well done. And time's up. Time's up. Time's up. So we have one last set of that. One last set. One last set. Are you ready? Let's go. 1, 2, 3 and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hold it up, hold it up. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well done, well done. Now let's go to the water bottles. 1, 2, 3 and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. If you came with me from the beginning to the end, well done, you did an amazing job. That is it from here at Tizi Nyumbani. My name is Evelyn Noala and I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next episode. Follow us on Eval Health and Fitness, EVEAL, on Instagram, Facebook or Twitter. Have a lovely, lovely day. Bye-bye.
You have been chosen to come here because you are the best journalism students in Kenya.
If your content is not interesting to look at, don't waste my time.
You submitted your work late. Why?
Each and everything that we used had problem.
No excuses in the newsroom.
Just let it go because it's a teamwork, for heaven's sake.
I think you should go home.
What if you don't agree with what he said? Will you say, So keep that.
Tumechoka, tumebit, tumezunguka.
Ni noma.
We are Nation, Africa's independent media brand. We are committed to empowering all Africans, from the young to the old, from the curious to the educated, and from the heart of the cities to the rural areas. We are Nation. Join us, because if you want to get far, you do it together. Nation. Empower Africa.
Fact Finder from the BBC.
Were these Chinese officials taking coronavirus victims for execution as claimed in this video? We went digging for the answers.
Will Ethiopia's new law curb the fake news menace in the East African nation? We hear from tech experts.
We'll also have tips on how you can spot a fake story online.
And are robots here to help, or will they take over the world? We find out.
Dad, Abu told me that his dad is retiring. What about you? Are you going to retire?
2020 showed us to never say never. Ensure your happiness with APA. Should never, ever happen.
Dr. Rabbit, is that you?
Yes, it is!
Wow.
I see you're all ready for bed.
I'm supposed to brush my teeth.
That's right! You're really becoming a brushing pro.
Thanks. I have a good teacher.
This is NTV.
Africa, thank you for joining us on Your World on this beautiful Monday morning. Hope you are doing well even as we count down to the last few days of September. Now remember, we are living in a new normal and we still continue to understand how that is possible for different sectors of society and even for different people with different circumstances. And speaking of which, sickle cell disease is rarely talked about, and sickle cell anemia actually is one of the most common in Kenya, yet it is behind a high number of deaths by suicide and premature deaths. So today we take time to understand sickle cell anemia and the challenges the sickle cell warriors have to live with. But before we get to all that, this is what else you can expect.
Wameaga watoto watatu, na kwa watatu
Mtoto mmoja alikuwa na sickle cell anemia.
As I mentioned, today we talk about sickle cell anemia, a disease considered to shorten patients' lifespans, but surprisingly, patients live past the expected age. Well, donkeys in Yemen are now very highly prized possessions, and we'll find out why. Mulhouse opened Europe's biggest indoor climbing wall. Poop wine and scorpion vodka are just some of the stars of a new exhibit on revolting alcohol at the Disgusting Food Museum in Sweden. Thank you for joining us on Your World. My name is Gladys Gashanda, and as I mentioned today, we focus on sickle cell disease. To be specific, that is common in Kenya, sickle cell anemia. And speaking of which, your question of the day is, do you know anyone living with sickle cell anemia? What are the challenges they face accessing medical care? Talk to us, that hashtag new normal, and you can also text us or call us using that number at the bottom of your screen. But before we get to that conversation, let's take a look at the effects of COVID-19 around the world in terms of the numbers. This morning, globally, they stand at 31,231,475 confirmed cases of COVID-19 globally. 22,822,260 people are reported to have totally recovered from the same, and unfortunately 965,065 people have succumbed to COVID-19. Now, in Kenya, as per yesterday press statement from the Ministry of Health, 36,981 people confirmed to have COVID-19. So far, out of that number, 23,887,000 have totally recovered, and we have lost 648 Kenyans to COVID-19. Those numbers still keep rising, and as the ministry says, we are yet to get out of the woods, so do take care and take all the precautions to avert this virus. Well, let's take a look at what's making headlines in other parts of the world. And foreign nationals in South Africa suffer routine harassment, violence and discrimination by locals and government authorities, according to Human Rights Watch. The group said xenophobia remained widespread in South Africa despite a government action plan rolled out in May of 2019 to combat the same. Elsewhere, thousands of Angolan Christians attended a church service in Luanda on Sunday, the first since coronavirus restrictions forced them to stay home 6 months ago. At least 3,000 parishioners dressed in white gathered at the Church of Our Lord Jesus Christ in the World, also known as the Turquoise Church, and sat on chairs arranged around a meter apart for an open-air service at the mega church in the Gulf suburb. Now, service lasted 90 minutes, much shorter than the traditional 5 hours. Either we will die together or we will make it to Europe. The Hui family has seen loved ones drown in the perilous crossing of the Mediterranean and twice failed to leave Tunisia, but they remain determined to escape. Now, a growing number of families are taking to the sea in the hope of finding prospects elsewhere, and in some areas of Tunisia, unemployment exceeds 30%. Mabrouk Hoi, a Tunisian mother who's tried to cross the Mediterranean with her family to reach Italy, says this is the second time we have attempted the illegal crossing and the second time the authorities detained my husband. They have threatened me with prison even though I need someone to be with my son at all times. No one can take care of him, and I have 6 children who live a vulnerable life and they are deprived of everything. Believe me, they are deprived of everything. Now back to South Africa and the funeral of George Bezos. Speakers, including South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, pay heartfelt tributes to the man who represented Nelson Mandela at his trial for treason and defended human rights to the end of his life. Bezos, a revered, soft-spoken figure, died at his Johannesburg home last week of natural causes at the age of 92.
Born a Greek, stateless for 31 years, yet becoming a proud patriot and South African citizen, some say a hero. He died a South African and a Greek, but above all, a human being.
The problem with having someone as revered as Babu is that you come to believe he's immortal. There's now deep sadness that he has finally passed on, yet some relief that the suffering of his last few months has ended. A heavy heart that his home now sits empty, that he's not in his bedroom or in his vegetable garden, yet a warmth in knowing that he is reunited with our beloved grandmother and his wife Rita.
Every crucial point in our country's history and along our path to liberation, George was there. Quietly, but also loudly, unassumingly, but also forcefully. The courtroom was his front line, and the law was his key weapon. From where he stood, in his own unique way, he did move the earth. He was a patriot, he was a hero, and he became a citizen of South Africa, and a proud one for that matter.
Now to something that actually focuses on our conversation of the day. Meet Sharon Agangwa, who shares her difficult journey with children born with sickle cell anemia.
Huyu mtoto ni Emmanuel Saganda. Ni mtoto wangu, niseme ni watano. Wameaga watoto watatu. Na kwa hao watatu, mtoto mmoja alikuwa na sickle cell anemia. Alikuwa na miaka 4 na huyu mwingine alikuwa stillbirth. Imekuwa safari ngumu sana. Kwa sababu nilipompata alikuwa mtoto mzuri mwenye afya, hakuwa na matatizo yoyote. Lakini alipofunga miaka 2 ndio akaanza kuonyesha dalili ya kugonjeka kila wakati. Nilimpeleka Roysambu, kuna hospitali inaitwa Medanta Hospital, na hapo ndio alipatikana ako na sickle cell anemia. Kwenda kwa nyumba kuelezea babake, alikasirika. Upendo wake kwa mtoto kaanza kudidimia kabisa. Na daktari alikuwa ametuambia ugonjwa wa sickle cell, mtu anaugua sickle cell hafai kuwa na stress yoyote, anafaa kuonyesha upendo. Alijua tu si wengine wamekufa na hiyo ugonjwa, naye baada amezaliwa nayo, sasa ni kifo tu atakufa. Mother-in-law akamsukuma sana apate mke mwingine mwenye atampatia watoto wazima. Sasa hiyo safari imekuwa ngumu sana. Kama maziwa ya kawaida hafai kutumia, atumia maziwa ya soya, hizo kienyeji, maini, samaki, na dawa pia. Kuna dawa anatumia hydroxyurea, inatoka 2000, anafaa ikunywe kila siku, lakini sometimes juu ya kukosa pesa inabidi anakaa kama miezi 2 kama haitumii. Unapata saa crisis zinainuka sana, anaumwa na hizi miguu sana na mikono hadi anaacha kutembea. Hata saa akitembea utaona mguu mmoja umeangalia huku. NHIF imeweza kunisaidia, though inanisaidia upande wa hospitali. Akilazwa natumia NHIF, lakini akienda kliniki, kuna kliniki zao zinaitwa hematology, hiyo situmii kadi, inabidi utumie cash. Sasa hata shuleni nikimpeleka naambia mwalimu, huyu mtoto usimruhusu acheze sana, juu hafai kucheza sana. Akicheza sana anaanza tena kuumwa na miguu. Watoto ni baraka.
The reality of many parents who have sickle children, but of course even those who live with this condition can speak of many other challenges they have to face on a day-to-day. But let's hear from them, and of course a specialist who walks with them. In studio, we are joined by Dr. Kibet Shikuku, who is a hematologist, and he's also the chairman of the Kenya Hemophilia Association. We're also joined in the studio by Joe Mudukitsa. He is a sickle cell warrior. On Zoom, we are joined by Gladys Mbori, who is also a sickle cell warrior. We are also joined from his home by Peter Ahago, who is a caregiver to 2 children with sickle cell anemia. And we shall be joined later on by another sickle cell warrior, Joanne Chezima. For now, thank you all for joining me on this crucial conversation. Daktari, we have said there are various types of sickle cell diseases, but most common in Kenya, sickle cell anemia. Maybe you can start by defining to us what exactly sickle cell disease is.
Yeah. Thank you, Gladys. So basically, I think key for us to understand is the fact that the red cell, has different components in it, one of which is hemoglobin. But of course, we also know that for the cell to function, it must have a membrane, and within it are enzymes. Those are the 3 things that constitute a red cell. It happens that the hemoglobin, which is a major content for mobilizing and moving oxygen within the body, is what gets affected in sickle cell. And the reason why that is the case is because the hemoglobin chain that is supposed to be normal, that is supposed to give the red cell a shape that we medically call biconcave, gets distorted, such that the cell ends up having a sickle-like shape. It actually becomes, prone to destruction. So basically, when you have this cell sickling, that is where the term sickle cell comes from. And this is a disease that has been with us for quite a while now, more than 100 years. And actually, the first patient that was diagnosed to have sickle cell happens to have been a medical student. And so, doctors were able to study this, young man or young lady that early in the 1910s. And so the disease has been with us for quite a while. Sickle cell causes several pathology, or rather challenges within the body. Anemia just happens to be one of them. And so when you have anemia as a result of these sickled cells, then we call that sickle cell anemia. But in reality, the disease, causes various, challenges and problems within the body, which I guess we shall be able to discuss as we move along.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, sickle cell anemia seems to be more common in Kenya. Is there a reason why Kenya?
So basically, just saying sickle cell is common in Kenya, truthfully speaking, may not be correct. But of course, Kenya happens to be within a region that is heavily infested by malaria, which has always been associated with sickle cell. It is believed that sickle cell has a protective effect to malaria patients, and that's why it is rampant in some parts of the world. So Kenya happens to be one of those regions where malaria is a big challenge. And so there are regions within Kenya itself, because you'll not also find sickle cell in every part of the country. There are specific, regions or pockets of the country where sickle cell is rampant. Go to the coastal region, for example, you'll get a lot of sickle cell. Come up towards Taita Taveta, you know, get to the western part of the country, and you'll see quite a bit of sickle cell. So yes, Kenya happens to be one of those regions within the world where you know, sickle cell is a major problem. And we know that sickle cell has always been associated with certain races, the black race being one of them. And I think, as I did mention, there is this myth or you know, explanation around certain infections, including malaria.
Okay, and sicklers have been said to be most prone to contracting the severe form of COVID-19. And speaking of which, in July, Busia County Health Facilities actually sent out an SOS saying they were suffering from a shortage of blood as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, as most residents fear donating blood at the medical facilities. Now, the officers there said they were very worried that those accident victims, expectant mothers, and those suffering from sickle anemia risk losing their lives due to the severe blood shortage. Let's talk about sicklers and COVID-19. What's the situation, Dr.
So as we all know, COVID-19 does not spare anyone. It does not know whatever status someone possibly could be in. And so anyone is prone to COVID-19 as an infection. And we know that we have different groups of patients who will manifest differently, especially when they get infected with the virus. Of course, sicklers happen to be among those that, if exposed, actually end up coming down with relatively severe outcomes, including death. And we know that this is heavily contributed by, you know, their status. You know, sicklers generally tend to be immunosuppressed. Again, their condition, you know, exposes them to complications. And we know that, you know, the virus causes or induces clot formation, which again, you know, happens to be an underlying problem with sicklers. And so when you combine their status together with exposure to the virus, then you worsen the outcome. And so if you look at regions that have sickle cell as a disease, then you basically just expose these patients to relatively bad outcomes. I remembered, I think a month ago, I was actually in Kenyatta University, you know, seeing patients with colleagues there. And we received a phone call, you know, of a sickler who had been newly diagnosed with sickle cell. And we started debating on what to do, because we know that they tend to complicate. And some aspects of care are not readily available that would have wished to prescribe for this particular client. So yes, it becomes a big challenge, especially when blood is a problem. And we know that blood is a major problem in this country, something that we need possibly to have a discussion on, because sicklers will require blood for sure.
Okay, let's understand this disease more from those who live the reality of the same. Joe, when did you discover that you were living with this condition?
So I was diagnosed with sickle cell when I was barely a teenager. But my mom did not tell me I had sickle cell until when I was joining high school. Yeah.
Okay, and this was you going into high school, right?
Yeah, me going into high school.
All right. Now, if you remember well, what are these symptoms you had that made you feel you must be a little bit different from the rest of the kids?
Okay, what made me feel like I was a little bit different from other people was I was on medication frequently, and then I used to have pain, which is normally called crisis. I used to have pain in the joints, chest. I used to wake up with headaches and fatigue.
And your mother at no point never explained why you were always on medication or going to hospital?
I used to ask, but she told me that I was a special child. That was her way of deviating from the main point of focus.
So why exactly did she finally come out to tell you that you are a sickler when you were going to high school?
Because I really wanted to go to a boarding school, and so that was a different environment all the same. So she had to tell me the truth, because I was going to struggle on my own without a mother, with just friends and strangers.
Yeah. And quick one, do you have any other sickler in your family tree?
Yes.
Who?
My cousin.
All right. So this was discovered after you or before you?
After me. He's younger than me. He's 16.
Aha, I see. Okay, let's understand the same from Gladys Mbori. When did you discover that you were living with sickle cell anemia? Gladys, I believe you are on mute. Kindly unmute yourself.
My parents told me about it, but I myself, I started feeling the symptoms. I just remember I was a sickly kid. I could not play with the rest of the others. I could not do PE in school. I used to get tired easily. And then I also had an eye problem, my left eye. Later on, I came to understand that it was because of a crisis. And unfortunately, I lost my left eye. So later on, by the time I was getting into high school, is when I fully understood what sickle cell was.
Okay, and do you have any other family member with this condition?
None at all, in the whole family. So that is why probably it was a bit hard for us, because I was the only one in the family, even in the extended family. So it was a bit challenging because we could not understand what was happening.
Okay, and I asked this question because I'd like to understand the different dynamics of those living with this condition. Let's hear from a father taking care of two sickler children. Peter, two daughters with this condition. How did you know your loved ones were different?
Thank you, Gladys. Before we came to know that they were suffering from sickle cell disease, it really took us a long time. It was really a long journey, because when my firstborn was born like 10 years ago, she was having problems every time, now and then. We didn't know what was actually happening in her life. So we used to go around to hospitals until such a time that when she was 5 years old, now she was tested with sickle cell disease. But surprisingly enough, the second born, who had already been born at the same time, we were advised to go carry out the same test. So that is when we came to realize that both of them are living with sickle cell disease. Now we started the journey from that point, and that is 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And what are these symptoms, these problems you say the children were manifesting?
Yeah, like the firstborn, she used to have frequent pains. And you know, when you're dealing with a situation which you don't understand, what you'll do is just to give painkillers. Just try to kill the pains every now and then, and give antibiotics. So she was in pain most of the time, and she was having some funny colors in the eye, the yellowish one, the jaundice, we call it jaundice, and she was not active. She was not active most of the time.
Okay,
Yes.
and were these the same symptoms you saw in your second born too?
Now, with the second born, it's funny because once we tested the firstborn, even before she started behaving funny, even experiencing this pain, we took her for a test, and when we confirmed that she's also a sickler, we started now managing. So she's not experiencing what the firstborn was experiencing most of the time.
And do you have sickle cell disease in your family?
This was the first time we experienced this. We don't have anyone sick in our family. But now, after realizing that we had given birth to sicklers, we started to investigate ourselves from both sides, my wife's side and my side. So I asked my mom, then I realized she buried 2 children when they were young. And I asked her, what were the symptoms when they were sick? And the signs she was giving me showed me that my brothers, 2 of them died of sickle cell because the signs were of the sickle cell disease.
Okay, and when you were tested, were you found to be carriers?
Exactly. Both my wife and I, we are carriers of sickle cell gene.
Okay, interesting. Now, Dr. we've had from all of them, and just some of the symptoms seem to vary. Some are similar. So do the symptoms always reflect from one patient to another, or it depends on the severity?
Yeah, so thank you, Gladys. So if you look at sickle cell as a disease, basically we talk of a disease that is said to be inherited. That is one. The second thing is you need 2 parents to be carriers. So you need a mother to be a carrier of the abnormal gene and the father to also carry an abnormal gene. And so when you combine these 2 genes, then you have the abnormality manifesting. So carriers tend to have slightly different presentation from those that have the 2 genes. And that could explain what Peter and the family may have gone through, where some of those that actually had the abnormal gene, one of the genes, could express complications a little later. But for patients that actually have both genes, the disease manifests quite early in life. And it's not always true that depending on the amount of the abnormal cells that you have, that you would you'll manifest clinically more aggressively than the others. Again, sometimes is too much to say because patients present different things at different timings. Again, depending on how the disease is managed. But having said that, so basically patients with sickle cell, as I did mention, have this abnormal red cell. And that cell is prone to early destruction. So the natural tendency for the body is when you break down a cell, the marrow, which produces these cells, then gets stimulated. So the marrow attempts to replace what was actually lost. At the same time, whatever is broken will manifest through this coloring that Peter was trying to describe, and he called it jaundice, which is the right terminology. Basically, you have yellowness, which is more manifested in mucous membranes, the eye being one of them. The young boy, who was said to be having pains within the legs and the hands, again, is a very common presentation that we see in the children. We call that hand and foot syndrome, because what happens is these bones, within the limbs, still have activity or capacity to produce red cells. So when the body destroys these cells, again, the same body attempts to replace by engaging different parts of the body to produce these cells. So you'll see swellings within the legs, within the hands, and that actually comes with the pain. So we call, as I did mention, that is called hand and foot syndrome. But the commonest in all these patients, other than this yellowness, getting tired because they are breaking their cells. And as I did mention, when you break your cells, we call that hemolysis. So they tend to have a crisis associated with the breakdown. We call that the hemolytic crisis. And actually that makes them quite anemic. So the level of hemoglobin goes down. The ability to function then goes down. The body ability to receive adequate oxygen, function like any other child, goes down, or any other individual. And so they tend to get tired quite easy. They can't be able to function like the other children. And you'll tend to see this quite a bit. The other thing is, as these children, as I did mention, have a low immunity, so infections tend to set in quite early. And so, they'll be presenting with all sorts of complications. Infections, as I did mention, will set in, and that now induces the crisis. And the crisis can be manifested in very many ways. The commonest is what we call vaso-occlusive crisis. And basically what happens is, as I did mention, so God is very fair with us, because what he did with the red cell was he designed this cell to be able to go through the smallest blood vessel. And so it has given it a shape that enables it to, reorganize itself to be able to pass through the smallest of the vessels. But when you have a cell that sickles, the moment it goes into these small vessels, it's unable to reshape itself to pass through that vessel. And so what it does is it obstructs the other cells from flowing. And that then causes obstruction. So any tissue or any cell beyond this obstructed vessel will not get oxygen. Okay? And so by extension now the body induces, inflammation, pain sets in because the cells start dying. So that is what induces pain in general. And so the moment you have occlusion, and that can affect any part of the body. It can affect the brain. It can affect the vessels in the chest. It will affect vessels, within the organs. It can affect vessels in other, parts of the body. And so you have this crisis then setting in and causing more problems, to these patients. The other thing that we tend to see quite common is, these patients will be moving from one facility to another facility. Especially for those that come from malaria endemic zones, will be treated for malaria. People will treat them, for anemia. And so the natural tendency in a doctor's mind is to give iron supplements and other supplements that would help the body build on hemoglobin. The misfortune about these patients is that if you give them more iron, because you are trying to correct the anemia, you increase the amount of iron in their system. Because when you break the red cell, you release a lot of iron into circulation. And so you add more iron to them, and you actually, create more toxins within the body. So the appropriate thing is to try and get early diagnosis, get good care, so that now you can taper the side effects. Finally, so that then those that possibly may be listening can look at this, they also tend to have organs enlarging. And, the organs that tend to be affected are organs within the abdomen. You have the liver and the spleen. And so these organs tend to enlarge because they also get stimulated to start producing cells. And so they enlarge, and that causes other complications as well, which I can describe a little later.
Okay, and speaking of crisis, it sounds like such an excruciating period of pain. Joe, how does that look like for you?
So, a crisis is an episode that is very painful. For me, it comes like somebody is ripping off my skin and inserting broken glass into my veins. So it is very painful and excruciating.
Okay, and when you think about it, what are the things that normally spike a crisis?
Things that normally strike a crisis for me is cold, fatigue, when I'm stressed up, or when I've done heavy exercises. So I had to stop exercises, morning exercises, but still a crisis comes. A lot of things will trigger that.
And when you think about it, when you were younger, or even now that in your adulthood, are there things that you've had to let go of just because you don't want to find yourself in a position where you have to deal with a crisis?
There are things that are very hard to let go because you will want to be seen as a normal person. So you can't stop playing, you can't stop interacting with people, because people who give you stress, there are people around you. So you can't stop interacting with such people. You just have to find a way to control yourself, but it's not easy because most people with sickle cell are usually very paranoid. They get angry very quickly, and that would also trigger a crisis.
And what do you normally do to manage a crisis? Do you take medication? I mean, what happens?
The first thing when you have a crisis is to take medication. Of course, there are some crises that are usually mild, then there are some that will send you to a doctor. So the first step is you take medication, relax, and then take a lot of fluids. Yeah.
Okay. Gladys, is this the same experience for you?
It's like Joy is telling my story. It's almost the same. My crisis mostly affects my chest, my back, and my knees. So yeah, it sometimes it's mild, sometimes it's very bad.
And can you describe a bad day?
A bad day. Okay, some crises are bad. Some attack you at night. In the middle of the night, you wake up. You are not breathing. Your chest is very congested. Your back is painful. So that is like one bad experience. Forgetting yourself. Okay, sometimes we have medications at home. So sometimes you think maybe if I just take my painkillers, if I just take water, it will go away. But I know it is a bad crisis if after 2 hours I feel no difference and the pain is persisting.
Okay.
So that is a sign for me that I should get medical hospital.
And do you know what the trigger points are for you?
Change of weather. I live in Mombasa, so when it's extremely hot, I get a crisis. When it's changing now to the cold weather, I get a crisis. And then stress also. When you're thinking, when you're overthinking, it causes stress.
Okay, and how about your menstrual cycle? Does it cause a crisis?
Yes. I never experienced that, but recently, starting this year, I've started experiencing that. Every month I'm on my menstrual cycle, I get a crisis. And sometimes it's a bad one. I need to go to the hospital and get some painkiller injections. So it's something that is now happening commonly to me.
Oh, wow. Okay. And for you, Peter, with children that are innocent and probably do not have the full scope of what they're dealing with, how does a crisis manifest and how do you manage it?
Yeah, just like we've said earlier on, that they begin to experience pains in the joints. Sometimes they complain of headache. Sometimes you see the physical body changes the color, or even in the eyes. So basically what we have been doing, first of all, we monitor them, because everything they do in moderation. They have to play, but we regulate. They don't just play excess, because once they go out, they run, they jump, they dehydrate. So what we are doing is just to make sure that they overdo whatever they are doing. So in fact, when you manage well and monitor everything, in fact, you avoid the chance of them entering into a crisis. A crisis can be avoided when you manage well. It's not that it has to come. Of course, we know they are prone to. But when you manage well, you keep them warm whenever necessary. They don't expose themselves into cold, especially when the weather changes. You keep them warm, what they wear, what they eat. They don't drink cold water and bathe cold water, things like that. You just avoid crisis to trigger.
Okay,
So
and
that is what we have been doing, yeah.
And I'm just thinking, these are children. At some point before the schools close, they are going to school. Then how are you able to manage all these things when they are away from you?
Yeah, this is what we discuss with their teachers. We explain to them well everything about their life. So even their teachers are aware with what is happening. And the doctor also writes a letter to the teacher. So the teacher knows everything that is happening, that they need to take their water adequately. So the teacher helps us to monitor them when they're at school, so that we avoid the crisis to come.
Okay, now Daktari, it sounds like such an intricate life to live with this condition. For the adults, easier because you know what you're dealing with. For the children, a little bit harder because a child is innocent and they want to play. What is the best way to manage a crisis?
Yeah, so the beauty about sickle cell is that once you have known that you are a sickler, as Peter rightfully mentioned, you can actually try to minimize complications. And the challenge usually associated with the red cell is loss of water. 70% of our body is actually, water. And sickled cells tend to lose water more easily. So dehydration is a key component. So the first thing we want to try and do is to make sure these patients are well hydrated. And the moment you hydrate the cell, you at least enable it to function almost, in a state that makes it function better. The second thing is we know that these patients get, crisis very easily when they get exerted or, they have an exercise, something that pushes them to do the extraordinary. And so you can regulate some of those outcomes. Thirdly, is we try to initiate them on treatment early. So we have drugs that we call disease modifiers. You can actually modify the disease and make it much more habitable. And one of the drugs that may have been mentioned, which we medically say is the gold standard, is a drug called hydroxyurea. Hydroxyurea happens to be a drug that was actually meant for cancer patients, but then was found to have some very good effect on sickle cell. And what the drug does is it actually enables the body to produce young cells. We call them fetal cells. Or cells with the fetal hemoglobin. And so basically what happens is you stimulate the marrow to stop producing sickled cells and enable it to produce younger cells with the fetal hemoglobin. The fetal hemoglobin does not sickle easily. And so you can modify the disease in such a way. The beauty about Kenya, let me possibly give the government some credit here, is that the drug is now registered. So it can easily be made available through the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. But what is missing is that it needs to be distributed to the peripheries so that then patients can easily access this particular drug. The other thing is we also keep them on other medications. We put them on antibiotics, and penicillin has been one of those. We also put them on other drugs that can assist the body in producing red cells. For example, we give them folate as one of the drugs. The other thing is we encourage them to really take a lot of fluids, and I think Peter seems to have learned the art pretty well. So every patient needs to just make sure they get rehydrated a lot of times, and that way you can actually minimize complications or prevent complications. And of course, when it gets excessive, we encourage them to come to hospital, where then we make assessments quickly, where a lot of times we actually may be forced to transfuse them. And transfusion here now requires that we should have blood. You can't talk of transfusion without blood. And that is the main reason why I guess Busia or Bungoma may be calling for blood for patients with sickle cell. Because when they have a crisis, one way of minimizing crisis is to dilute the sickle cells by giving them blood. We have different ways of administering the blood. One is just replacing, giving them blood, whole blood, to try and dilute the sickle cells. But we also have a slightly better, it may sound a bit sophisticated, but then that is the right and the best way to manage sicklers by doing what we call red cell exchange. Red cell exchange basically is a process where you remove abnormal sickle cells and you replace with normal cells. Why that is important is because when you just add blood, whole blood, into a sickler, you actually increase more iron in them. And what that does is that then you overdose them or you toxify them with more iron, which is not the best way. You would then have to bring in drugs again to remove that iron. We call that iron chelation. You do not want to find yourself doing this because that increases the cost of treatment. You again, damage the organs more. So, but when you do red cell exchange, you actually remove what you don't need and you replace with what is normal. We call that red cell exchange. And we have this technology readily available in Kenya. I don't see why we are not escalating our care to that level. But we also need to aggressively look for blood so that then we can be able to support sicklers appropriately.
And we'll talk more about the cost of treatment in a moment. And thinking about how you have to intricately live through life to ensure that you don't trigger a crisis. Joe, there must be a lot of stigma that comes with people who do not understand what this condition is and why you act so different from somebody else. Talk about your experiences.
Having sickle cell comes with a lot of challenges and stigma. For example, let me talk about male with sickle cell who experience something we call priapism. So priapism is a painful erection and it's not sexually stimulated. So it comes maybe when there is red sickle cell cells that stick in the wrong parts. So having priapism as a man makes it hard for relationships or sexual engagements. It makes the man feel like they are disinterested in the sexual activity. So this comes with a lot of stigma in the society. People will not understand you. They will want to question your capability as a man. That is one. And then we have the crisis. The crises usually come unannounced. They can come anywhere. They can find you in an office, in an open space, anywhere. So when they come, people will start talking. They will associate you with devil-worshipping cults or something of that sort. So people who have a faint heart might try to confiscate themselves. They will stay inside and not come out. So when you do that, it's like you're hurting yourself even more. So as a person, me, what I do is that I don't actually care what people say about me. I mind of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to live a positive life with sickle cell.
And well done for you, Joe. And Gladys, your challenges when it comes to facing stigma?
I feel that people don't understand sickle cell. You can even sometimes walk in a hospital and you tell them sickle cell crisis and people don't understand what you're talking about. I feel that there's need for more awareness. People should know more about that. And then for those who know me personally, sometimes you feel overlooked because people always tend to judge you. She will not make it. She will not come. She will not be able to do this. So sometimes I feel like I'm being excluded in activities. And then even in things like employment, you are worried that your employer may not be able to understand you well because you are unpredictable. Today you are okay, tomorrow you wake up, you're giving them a phone call, I cannot make it. So yeah, That is some of my challenges.
And has this come to mess up maybe relationships or make getting into one a challenge?
Okay, getting into one, maybe. I personally feel that sometimes I am overlooked. I feel that maybe they judge me, they feel that I'll be a burden. So I have not been in a relationship before, but I feel that those who have tried to do that with me have avoided, have drawn away because they feel this will be a burden. So sometimes that makes me feel bad.
Okay, we hear you, Gladys. And for you, Peter, with the little children, of course, they're not in the dating circles, but having two children who are sicklers, I'm sure you had the society around you talking, right?
Yes, people are talking. And, you know, always when you have a challenge, people have to talk. And our experience has really, it has been bad. And again, out of a bad thing, there is a good thing. So what I would call a stigma, to me, I use it as something, a blessing, because you see, when people look at you and say, this man is married to a good wife, but there is always a but in your life, according to them. This man is like this, but his children are this one, you know. So there are so many things that people are saying. And that is the reason why we decided not to sit back, wait for what they are saying. We go to them and teach them. We've been counseling them, even the very close people in the family. Because I remember my wife, if you, for example, the sisters, they are giving birth to normal children. So it's like they are complaining. They think that it is because their sisters got married to someone who has a problem is the reason why they have children with sickle. So to me, that's a stigma. So we had to take the initiative of now explaining to them what sickle cell is, and they understand. But I thank God because some of them are taking the step to go for the test so that they know their sickle cell status, even their children. Because this is not just, you know, when you narrow it down, for example, I heard you asking Daktari, it's prevalent in Kenya. This is not just a Kenyan thing. And most people have thought that it is just a Kenyan thing, and you bring it down, it is a Luo thing. One day in an hospital, one of the health providers asked me a question. Ni ile ugonjwa ya Wajaluo. You see, look at that kind of a question. And another one is asking you, when did this child get sickle cell? So you find that even most people, sicklers, they have suffered in the hands of the people who are supposed to be helping them. So people need to understand what sickle cell is. And that's the reason why awareness is required, so that this issue of stigmatization can be dealt with. It's not just a Kenyan. In fact, in Western Kenya, Northern Tanzania and Eastern Uganda, because of Lake Victoria. And remember, sickle cell came as a result of protecting the body. It is protecting in a way. So other than being something that is deadly, when a child is born with it, to some point it is protecting the body. For example, people who are carriers, I mean, they are protected against malaria, and that is the genesis of sickle cell. I remember me and my wife, I can't even remember when did I get malaria last, because we are protected. The challenge is when the child inherits an S gene and an S gene from the father and an S gene from the mother, is when the child turns to be sickle cell. So we need to understand more and more about sickle cell.
We hear you.
It's all over. In fact, yes. In fact, just to break it more further, Nigeria is leading. And it's not just, it's leading in sickle cell. It's all over. And back to Kenya, initially people thought that people from Western and Coastal right now in our support group, I've seen people from Central, from Eastern, from Northeastern. They are giving birth to children with sickle cell. And because the awareness has not been there adequately, people tend to believe something like a curse or something. They see death. When they give birth to people with sickle cell, the only thing that they think about, it is death. In fact, doctors, some doctors, I'm not saying all of them, some, they go to a facility and the doctor tells you, this child will not live beyond 8 years, 10 years, 14 years. Look at that. It's a stigma. So we also need to come back to ourselves, and even the doctors need to learn more about sickle cell. Remember, initially, doctors were not, some of them, I'm not saying all of some, were not keen on what sickle cell is. So I thank God nowadays doctors are beginning to learn about it. So each and every facility, at least there's a doctor who understands what sickle cell is.
Okay, Peter, we hear you and very, very encouraged that you have such great information about this condition that your two children have to live with. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, Daktari will be answering some of the questions that have come out of your testimonies. That is Joe, Gladys, and Peter, and also busting some of these myths as we've had also from your testimonies. But I'm also hearing that you're talking to us. Remember that hashtag new normal. We had asked, do you know anyone living with sickle cell anemia? What are the challenges they face accessing medical care? And we have Medi Onyango who says sickle cell drugs are too expensive. There are not enough hematologists in government hospitals, and those in the private facilities charge exorbitant consultation fees. In low-income and rural areas, doctors are ignorant of the disease and do not give adequate information to patients and their caregivers. We hear you. Bet Guru says, my mom currently is at Medihill Hospital 3 weeks now and yet to recover. The bill is almost at 1 million. Drugs are so expensive. We just bring God to intervene. We really don't know where to get the rest of the money. The expense of managing sickle cell coming out very strongly. Chabet says, yes, I know one of my neighbor's son. He goes through a lot of pain before being attended. Mtoto anakuwa amepitia machungu sana. Kulia tu ndo tulizo lake. I wish there was one injection that you can get and you're healed forever. Faith Mutambo says, my friend died last week. She fought a good fight. Condolences to you. Agi says, you find some drugs are available and others are not even accessible. SC says, very expensive drugs. Again, the costs comes up. Frank says, actually the biggest challenge they face is during the sickle cell crisis period. You may find out that the blood banks in hospital have no blood. This is very challenging. Mark Alex says, getting a medical cover is always a big problem, more so the set rules for one to qualify to have a cover. The last one here for now, Okello says, I know one minor who happens to be a pupil whom I met while doing tuition. At first, I didn't know of this until I got to hear from a colleague who recognized it. Thank you, Okello, for speaking to us, and keep your comments and your experiences coming through on that hashtag new normal, even as you tell us if you know of anyone living with this disease and the challenges they face in accessing medical care. We take a short break, but we'll be right back.
Uganda has seen steady economic growth in the last decade, and this has created a fertile ground for the diaspora to return home as they are also seeking greener pastures. But how has the country facilitated their return?
In a month, we are looking at about 30 patients. That is a huge drop from way over 100 patients. We are now using technology more because now we are having to consult through the phone and through avenues such as WhatsApp, which can allow you to video call.
Did you know there's a laundry bar soap that can help save you time, water, and money? You save by not having to use multiple products. And you only rinse once. For a laundry soap that can help save you time, water, and money, try Whitewash Extra. Brand power, helping you buy better.
Top dressing tips. Top dressing is the application of fertilizers to boost harvest in growth period. Ensure the soil is moist, and in warm weather, ensure you mulch to avoid evaporation.
More than 500,000 farmers in Kenya can have easy access at affordable packs of 1 kg to 50 kg across major agro-dealers. Farmers who have used Mavuno fertilizers have realized 30% more yield. Please feed your crop and soil with the best fertilizers for future prosperity. Call us today and learn how Mavuno fertilizers is helping in increasing food production in Africa.
The super efficient Jiko Koa requires half the charcoal of other Jikos, so you use less fuel and receive immediate savings. Enjoy our special offer now and save 1,000 Kenya shillings with every purchase. Jiko Koa, Kenya's #1 saving Jiko.
Best quality KEBS certified steel. TMT steel bars. Produced from the most modern machines and technology, reliable and with the highest strength, suitable for all types of construction. That is, high-rise buildings, bridges, houses, and roads.
Look for the Devki mark on a wide-selling reinforcement, twisted, and TMT rebars, which are KBS certified and have the diamond mark of quality. Devki Steel, Kenya's most trusted steel company.
Karatina University wishes to announce to all new and continuing students that lectures of the first semester of the 2020-2021 academic year are ongoing. New students' university joining instructions and details on creation of e-learning account for all students are on the university website. Payment of requisite fees is a requirement.
It's time to kickstart your smart and give your brain a mega boost with DSTV. There's oodles of mind-blowing channels for kids young all together now. To get your knowledge workout, get connected to DSTV.
We are back on Your World. Thank you for staying with us. My name is Gladys Gashanja. We are talking about sickle cell disease this morning and learning a lot from it. And Dr. Kibet Shikuku is a hematologist or specialist of the day. John Mudukidze, who is a sickle cell warrior. Gladys Mbori, sickle cell warrior. And Peter Ahago, who is a caregiver to 2 children living with sickle cell disease. Thank you for joining me on this conversation. And Dr. before we went to break, a lot of questions came up. First of all, Joe talked about being a guy and the intimacy challenges he goes through, and he brought up priapism. What is priapism?
So priapism is a continuous erection that is, it's not stimulated because of sexual urge or feelings. And as Joe did mention, actually This is due to, poor flow, of blood within the penis. And basically you have a continuously erected penis, and that obviously will come with pain, because the normal tendency is in an erection, you expect the penis to erect for some amount of time and then allow it to, to deflate. But now here you have a continuous form of erection that is abnormal. And so that comes with a lot of pain. And actually it can even be continuous, recurring. And we've seen more than, again, literature talks of about 40%. Locally speaking, we've seen patients getting quite frustrated because of these abnormal erections. And one of the things we try recommending, and I've again seen people moving from one facility to the other, is to try and minimize, actually rehydrate as much as possible. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, there is a new mode of treatment where we try to remove the sickle cells as much as possible and replace with normal red cells. That way then you taper the amount of sickle cells in circulation. We call that red cell exchange. But as I did mention, that is again affected by the availability of blood. So basically, I know this is a big challenge, especially that young men and even children go through. Mm-hmm. The same thing happens to women who are relating, because we know that these are people who get into crisis very easily. So the process of love making can be, it can form part of the exerting activities. Mm-hmm. And again, that can stimulate or cause crisis. The process of labor, for example, again, is energy consuming, and that can also be a cause of crisis. Pregnancy on its own is an issue to sicklers, and we've lost sicklers in this country, while expectant. You also have a lot of losses of pregnancy, early losses of pregnancy, and so you get a family getting quite frustrated while attempting to have a normal life. And so again, this causes stigma, causes misunderstanding, and relating becomes a huge challenge.
And definitely, even Gladys mentioned just going through her menstrual cycle is also another risk factor for her. Now, she also brought up the support within the workplace. You do not know if your employer will understand that today you're fine, tomorrow you're not. What kind of legislations maybe that need to be put in place to ensure that we support them in wherever they are in life?
So sickle cell, just like any other disease, needs to be supported by, all forms of activities and possibly all aspects within our society. One of the things that we know, if well catered for, is that a sickler can live a normal life. A sickler can be productive. Sicklers are very aggressive, and I don't know why somehow the patients have ever come across one. Sicklers or, have other disease entities tend to be quite aggressive in life and quite productive, actually, if appropriately used. And so one of the things I would highly recommend should happen in this country is we should focus on legislature that tends to support care provided to sicklers and other disease entities. For example, in our workplaces, we should make sure people get rehydrated. We have areas where, or rather we facilitate sicklers with certain specific types of jobs that do not necessarily predispose them to excesses in terms of crisis. We should also make drugs readily available and much cheaper. One thing I know is that the costs are quite high, quite prohibitive, and possibly we shall look at costs a little later. But one of the things that I know has not happened is that drugs are not readily available in our facilities, and even where they would have been available, they are very costly. You also find out that different combinations are not readily available in different facilities. You go to a facility where a portion of a drug is available, others are missing, and so patients keep moving from one area to the other. Mm-hmm. The other thing is if we were to change our modalities of care, then we would reduce visits to hospitals. I'll tell you, with the conventional mode of treatment, patients have to frequent hospitals. and that complicates, you know, the environments. If someone is working and you have to keep frequenting a hospital, that certainly predisposes you to problems with your employers. So if we changed our modality of care, brought in newer modalities of care, including possibly even changing from the conventionals to starting bone marrow transplants, imagine you're almost as good as cured. So you can be able to be more productive if we changed our approach to care. So really what we need to do is to try and work as a country towards processes that would make these people feel loved, you know, feel cared for. We tailor activities that would support their productivity rather than put them and subject them to excesses that would actually make them face more crisis.
Okay, now before we get to the healthcare workers, which most of you mentioned, some have no idea what sickle cell disease is about. Joe, it's been said over and over again, sicklers are normally told they can only live up until a certain age of life. Joe, how long were you told you were going to be on this earth?
16.
You were told you would only live up until you were 16 years old?
Yes.
And how old are you now?
25.
25 years old?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Gladys, how old are you?
I'm 29.
Did they ever tell you when they thought you would, you know, pass on, so to speak?
Yes, I was given 2. The first one I was given was 18.
Uh-huh.
So when I passed 18, I moved on to 21. I was given one for 21.
Yes.
And apparently when I reached 21, I got a pneumonia attack, which was very bad, and I was admitted. So in my mind, I thought that this is it now, my time is up.
Okay. And at that point, did any health worker realize your history and remind you that you're leaving on borrowed time?
Pardon?
Did you ever find any health worker who probably reminded you that you were leaving on borrowed time?
Yes, some can be frustrating. Some tell you you will not make it. Even after this, you're still going to die. But for me, I choose to focus on the positive side. I've also met some who have been very supportive and encouraging throughout my journey.
Okay, Peter, 2 children. How old is the first?
The first one is 10 years and a half. And the second born is 8 years now.
Now, I am
and
sure...
remember, one more thing I didn't tell you. I've got 3 children. The last born, who is a boy, is 7 years and is normal, doesn't have a trait, doesn't have a sickle cell. So that is another thing that also people need to exhaust further. We are carriers. It is also possible. There are parents who are carriers, but they have children who are normal. Some are just carriers but don't have sickle. So it's a probability issue.
Okay.
It's not a guarantee that you must have sickle cell when you are carrier. You can have, but it's So I have 3 children.
Now,
so the third born is 7 years.
And for the 2 children, have you or were you ever told what the cutoff age is for them?
Exactly. You know, okay, they got tested when the firstborn was 5 years old. The secondborn was 3 years old. Already, that was the past mark of 3 and maybe 2 and months. So they were looking at age 9 and she's 10. Of course, they are now looking at age 14, which to me, I know she's going to go beyond, because in our support group, we have people who are in their 50s, 40s, 30s. So I know they make it.
Okay, now, Daktari, we hear different cut-off ages for all of them. You know, Joe, Gladys, and Peter with his 2 children. Is it scientifically proven that sicklers can only live up until a certain age, or what informs this?
So I am an optimist. and possibly I'll try to be as positive as I can because life comes from above. We have someone who basically knows when and how we shall die. But I know, medically speaking, sickle cell is a disease that tends to complicate quite a bit to the extent that doctors, would give you certain projections based on estimations if the disease is actually not appropriately addressed. And we know that, if the disease is not treated properly, it can actually cause death quite early. The second thing is we also know that there are certain predisposing factors that can actually expose one to easy loss of life. But I think all in all, we also know that you can improve the quality of life of a sickler if you attend to that sickler appropriately. I know during my training when some of my seniors could tell us, with this disease you can live up to 19 years. I know of, and actually that is what made me to try and support the hemophiliacs because when I was training, I was told these are not people who stay for long. And when I went for my training out of this country, I was surprised to find people living up to 80, 90. And I think that changed my perception. So again, it's heavily dependent on the level of care that is provided. So I think I want to tell all our warriors, all our sicklers, that there is good life out there. All we need to do is to fight together. We push for change together. We try to ensure that care, appropriate and optimum care, is provided to all sicklers, and their life should be good. I feel a little discouraged to see xenophobia in South Africa, a country I really cherished, and I saw a lot of good in South Africa. And I would tell you that compared to patients down there in the south, their lifestyle, their quality of life is a lot better because the government has heavily invested in managing patients with sickle cell. So life is heavily dependent on the level of care. So when you hear clinicians talking of shortened lifestyle, lives, it's because possibly they are just as frustrated as anybody else, and all they can do is, communicate what they think is best. But I think with good care, patients should have good quality of life.
And still on health workers, Peter has said he's gone to hospital where a health worker had no idea what the children were dealing with. Gladys also mentioned the same thing. So what is it that not all health workers are trained to understand or even identify sickle cell?
So basically, I'm a lecturer. I teach hematology and blood transfusion at the University of Nairobi. And sickle cell is one of the, commonest diseases that we talk about. So almost every doctor in this country has heard about sickle cell. They understand sickle cell. But the biggest challenge is unless you get exposed as a doctor, or you come across patients on a routine basis, it will always be a problem to identify some of the diseases. The second challenge is that sickle cell as a disease presents, again, almost similar to other conditions. And the normal tendency is for us in this country, a patient coming in with yellowness of eyes, fever, joint pains, the first thing you want to think about is malaria. And so you get, misdiagnosed, mistreated, and the routine continues. Until now, someone, with a keen eye would see the changes and possibly make a quicker diagnosis. The second thing is we have very poor diagnostic capabilities in our country, to the extent that if someone could be able to investigate a patient quickly, then that could assist doctors to pick sickle cell out quickly and possibly initiate care. And that is the bigger headache. If you went out there, what will naturally happen is that doctors will start you on treatment for other diseases and forget that sickle cell is also a common disease. And so the natural tendency is to try and initiate forms of treatment that then delays care. And so you'll see these patients moving from one facility to another facility. And for those that have never seen actually a patient with sickle cell, they'll be wondering, what are you talking about? Again, this has made us, even as clinicians, to initiate programs that tend to sensitize doctors on sickle cell and other disorders. I've seen colleagues mismanage patients, not because they loved to. Hemophiliacs, for example, will present with a swollen knee to a clinician that is an infection in the knee. For me, if it is a bleeder, that is blood in the knee. So again, you have diseases mirroring each other in a manner that causes confusion. But unless we facilitate care and diagnosis in particular, then it becomes a problem across board. So one of the things I would really urge our government to do is to make sure diagnosis is taken further down to assist and improve on identification of sickle cell as a disease, and so that care can be initiated early to improve on the quality of life.
Okay, and we're now joined by Joanne Chizima, who's also a sickle cell warrior. Joanne, you've been listening in and watching the show. Thank you for joining us. And has your journey been similar to the stories you've had this morning?
Hi, Gladys. Thank you so much for having me. Sickle cell journey is not easy. It's been a tough journey to tread on. But the saddest thing, most of the people are diagnosed as early as possible. I was diagnosed at 22. So you can imagine going through life, not understanding what is going on, always being treated for malaria and typhoid, and never understanding what is happening.
Wow. Wow. 22 is pretty advanced. And what led to your diagnosis?
I remember at this time I had acute chest syndrome, which is a very bad chest pain. It's more of pneumonia, but it's really bad. And that's the time I could barely breathe. I couldn't even move because of the pain. So I had done all the other tests, but the doctors didn't understand why I'm still in so much pain and why my blood levels are very low. So eventually when they decided to do further tests is when now they discovered I have sickle cell.
Okay, and we've talked about the various and numerous challenges those living with this condition have to face on a regular. You are married, and has this come between you trying to start a family?
No, it hasn't come in between. It's not stopped me from having a family, Gladys. And that's the beauty of it. I've got a very understanding partner, and now we have 3 children. They're carriers of sickle cell, but they don't have the disease.
So in this case, you're the only one who has it. Did you ever do a test on your husband?
Yes, we did a test. We had to do a test because I don't want to face this pain. I don't want to live with sickle cell disease because it's a tough journey. So I wouldn't want to put my children through that. So he had to be tested to find out if he's carrying the gene. And when he was okay, I guess things were smooth from there.
Okay, somebody must be watching and wondering, so what happens if you find that he's a carrier? Would that have made the decision a bit different for you?
I think at the end of the day, it depends with what you want.
Yeah.
Because at least if you have the information about sickle cell and all that, if you want to go ahead, that's okay, but just know what is coming. Yes, at least you have an idea of what is coming.
Okay, now we talked about crises and everyone talked about their different trigger points. What are your trigger points?
Dehydration, number 1. We always have to stay hydrated. So if I don't take enough water, like at least for me, when it's cold like this, minimum, I take 3 liters of water, and warm water, especially when it's cold, I take warm water. I avoid strenuous activities. I avoid just getting stressed. I avoid just getting infections, simple things that I can try and manage to avoid the crisis. You find me doing it.
And you have 3 children. How are the pregnancies?
It is tough because a healthy woman carrying a pregnancy is never easy.
Yes.
Now you can imagine someone with a condition like this. You already have low blood levels. You're weak. And that means carrying a pregnancy, you need to have proper blood levels. You need to be, you're not supposed to even be in crisis, because this is when they cannot even give you strong painkillers, because that will affect the baby. So it's a challenge, yes. But also, I'm not saying that it cannot be done. And so people need to understand that it's a journey that you need to walk with your doctors. You cannot do it alone.
And speaking of walking with others on this one, you say you have a very supportive partner. Was this a concern maybe from his family that he was getting hitched to a sickler?
Yes, it was. But I guess the heart wants what the heart wants, and he was ready for it. So he knew how to handle that.
Okay, all right. And it is interesting that she brings up something that somebody had asked earlier, Daktari. Is it possible for you to actually do a test and avert having a child who has the disease?
Yeah, so because sickle cell is a genetic disorder, you can get tested quite early. We can get samples early. Determine, whether the baby you are carrying actually is a potential sickler. But again, you notice that our laws in this country prohibit abortion. So whether you like it or you don't like it, you just have to carry that pregnancy. You need to be supported. And some of us are pro-life anyway, so we would tend to want to support that child and give that child a chance to live. But having said that, I think the most critical thing, and we face this a lot of times, actually when we are in the clinic, especially, you see a man carrying a baby and they start asking you questions, and men tend to be a little curious. They'll ask you a very direct question. Between me and my wife, who has the problem? So, again, counseling becomes a key component, and we are unable to do genetic testing in this country. But if genetic testing was a possibility, then we would actually literally be checking people to see who actually carries the gene. And that way you can actually counsel a couple appropriately. I know of colleagues, doctors, who are both carriers, and they realized that both were carriers when they were already married, and somehow they just agreed to move on, and somehow luck has been on their end. So key is early diagnosis, understanding the complications associated with the disease, supporting the patient, and for Joanne, I think she's been a very lucky woman. We want to see more Joannes. We want to see patients living normal lives, carrying pregnancies to term. As I did mention, I've lost friends through pregnancy because the complications are quite enormous, but then there are things that can be managed. As I did mention, you need to pick the disease early, try to reduce the complications as much as possible, so that then someone can carry pregnancy or engage in an exercise that warrants a bit more of energy. So really, as Joanne did mention, key is accepting that there is a condition, trying to manage the complications and averting complications soonest possible.
Okay, now we take another short break right here on Your World. When we come back, we talk about that elephant in the room, the cost of treatment. Stay with us.
Breaking news from Molfix. Let's see what they're developing right now.
Pants is just for me. It really feels very comfy.
Molfix pants with anatomic fit technology. New Molfix pants, an invention from babies for babies.
You should also try Molfix.
In the event that you would like to verify the genuineness of the certificates, what you need to do is to dial *352#. You can also download the Aki app onto your phone. If by any chance you happen to sell your motor vehicle, it will be important that you contact your insurance company for cancellation of the certificate that you're holding.
We're going in. Mobile, we have multiple confirmed dead.
What's going on?
I don't know. Some apartment building in LA. It's good we're flying away.
Sir? Sir, you're gonna have to stay still, okay? Why are we stopped?
The tower's not clearing us for a gate.
Why?
Won't tell us!
Captain!
Where are we? That door will take you to tarmac level. This has never been locked before. Lockdown.
Attention Flight 318. You're now under quarantine. Do not attempt to leave.
Vina vegetable oil stays liquid to the last drop, so it's smooth cooking from start to finish. Now with an easy-to-pour cap. Mapishi poa, madishi poa.
Along came one.
It looks like Luciana is sticking her nose into things that are none of her business.
This isn't the right time.
He was always after me and everything was just going great. Until Marta got in the way, just as she did with your father.
If there's anything that concerns my children, you have to tell me about it. Do you understand? Excuse me for interfering, but if Luciana didn't... But still, she doesn't have any right to keep from me anything that has to do with my children. Yes, but...
I don't even want to think about how much trouble she's in.
Luciana, the fact that I can't be with you doesn't mean that I can just forget everything I feel for you.
Are you all right, Madam Lillian? Is anything wrong? It's nothing you can fix. Nobody has the cure for love problems.
Along came love, in association with Blue Band Peanut Butter.
It's time to kickstart your smart and give your brain a mega boost with DSTV. There's oodles of mind-blowing channels for kids young all together now. To get your knowledge workout, get connected to DSTV.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gashanja. Let's take a look at the other world. Now, Abu Mohammed fusses over the donkeys he's selling in war-torn Yemen, where the animal has become a must-have commodity at a time of biting fuel and currency crisis. Now, Yemenis have resorted to using donkeys to transport water and goods as a conflict that has ravaged the economy for more than 5 years leaves gas-guzzling SUVs out of reach for most. Abu Mohammed, a donkey seller, a donkey can cost up to 30,000 riyals from Abyan province, he says, and the cart he is pulling costs between 15,000 to 20,000 riyals. We can make a profit between 7,000 to 8,000 riyals a day, while it costs almost nothing to feed the donkey. Elsewhere, Europe's biggest indoor climbing wall opens in Mulhouse in the east of France, in the heart of a former industrial site undergoing a major transformation. It attracts amateurs and enthusiasts and could become the driving force behind a rehabilitated neighborhood. Now, Bruce Call, president of the Climbing Mulhouse Center, says we have routes from 12 meters high up to 25 meters, and we have about 60 routes inside, 12 outside, and we still have a mezzanine plus boulders, and very soon we are planning an extension to multiply by 6 or 8 the number of boulders we have here. Israel's Antiquities Authority unveils a trove of 425 pure gold coins said to be some 1,100 years old, dating back to the Rehovot in central, to the Abbasid Caliphate, discovered in what was an industrial area near Rehovot in central Israel. Now, the co-director of the excavation says they started cleaning and digging and then uncovered a golden thing that popped out of the ground. The area manager then reached out and said they had found apparent treasure. Together we started unearthing the treasure and the dozens of gold coins dating to the Abbasid period, which is approximately 1,200 years ago. Now, elsewhere, people are having some delicacies. Icelandic sheep doing whale testicle and pool wine have become the order of the day and are being exhibited at the Museum of Disgusting Food in Malmö, Sweden. And these strange displays have been challenging and sometimes revolting alcohol types from all over the world. Strange, strange indeed. But hey, back to our conversation of the day, sickle cell disease. And a lot of you have written and said you know people that are living this condition, you are living with this condition, and the treatment and the cost of the same is exponential. Joe, how does the cost of treatment look like for you?
So the cost of treatment for sickle cell is very expensive. For example, me as a person, I would need to spend almost 20,000 per month. Now, we have daily doses. For example, hydroxyurea and folic acid, you have to take daily. Where I come from, hydroxyurea is 50 shillings. You also need to take an anti-malaria, which is called Paludrin. Paludrin is 45 shillings. Now you have to understand that insurance does not cover this. So when you go to hospital, you have to be ready with the money. Now, me, I might get to afford the 45 shillings or 50. But then there are those people in the villages who cannot even afford to put food on the table. These ones, now they have to suffer. Like in Vihiga, since COVID started, now because there is inadequate access to medication, we don't have medication in the county hospital for people with sickle cell. A chemist charges you maybe 100 shillings for 2 pills. Now, people have to die without medication. We have buried, like, I have watched like close to 5 burials of people with sickle cell because there was inadequate access to medication. Now, me, I can afford maybe a sachet of medication. Now I have a lot of friends in Western who cannot access that kind of medication because the cost is very expensive. Now I have to share with one or two because I can't share with everybody. Now I run a recording studio, so you'll find that everybody with sickle cell within Vihiga County knows where I am. Because I'm a vocal advocate, they'll have to come to me because I'm easy to access now. How do you help such people? You know, they might think you have a lot of money, you buy medication. And when people with sickle cell come to you, they don't come to ask for money. They come to request specifically for medication. How do you help such a person when the counties now cannot come in and say, okay, let's subsidize this type of medication so that it can be accessed to one or two? You find that now when the chemists have run off, you have to go maybe to Kakamega or maybe Eldoret. Actually, Eldoret, they are a little bit cheaper at the Alexandria Cancer Center. So you have to get medication and help these people. What if they cannot get? And you know, having sickle cell, you need to have frequent medication. You need to take medication daily. Without that, now you find the people, they have maybe strokes, frequent attacks. And when you have frequent attacks, it means that your immune system is becoming low. So people have to die. You will then realize that most people with sickle cell, they don't get to live past the age of 18 because there is no medication. It's very expensive. Then there is not enough awareness. Yeah.
Okay, and for you, Gladys, does that resonate in the coast region?
Yeah, it does. It is mostly the same story. Actually, for me, at the moment, I'm not on high. Is it okay? Is it okay?
Yes, now I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's almost the same. For me, at the moment, I'm not on hydroxyurea. So I also have the burden of thinking of folic acid and pyrrolidine daily. So the cost, actually, it is a bit challenging because for my monthly clinics, I have to travel to Kilifi. So that is transport. And then I use NHIF. NHIF does not cover most things that we require when we go to the hospital. So I wish that more emphasis could be given on that. More insurance companies could come up with a plan to help people with sickle cell because it is a big burden and it is something that you have to live with for the rest of your life. So getting the medication there is a bit of a burden.
Okay, as for you, Peter, what is your experience catering to 2 children with sickle cell disease?
Yeah, the experience is the cost. You know, everything about management revolve on finance. So, like my friends have also said, you must always have the money to buy the drugs, to buy food, because remember, the doctor said our problem here is the blood, So for you to work on your blood, you must also eat well. So you don't just give any food. So other than a drug, you must also factor in the issue of feeding. So the cost is the challenge. You must have money, and sometimes maybe things are not well. So it's just about the money issue. Yeah.
It's an expense. Okay, now, Joanne Chizima, you not only live with this condition, but you went a step ahead to establish a foundation to help others manage this condition. Are you facing such experiences as talked about by Joe and the rest?
Yes, Gladys. Problems out here are challenging. Problems with people living with sickle cell disease. People will call you, tell you, I don't have medication, I am sick. And some of them, they don't even have that proper support system. You find some of them have been thrown out, especially once they get to 18. They've been thrown out and told, go and fend for yourself. And mark you, this person already has a condition and has not been taken care of properly. So now challenges of cost of medication and cost of taking care of a person living with sickle cell disease is too high. If medications like hydroxyurea, paludrin, if the costs are subsidized, or better yet, if government can make it free. You know, at some point, like malaria, medication were given free. TB, at some point, medication were given free. So why are we the forgotten lot? Yeah? Because it's quite expensive to deal with sickle cell disease. And as Joe says, people in the villages, and here I'm dealing with people coming from Kariobangi, Dandora, Kibera, Kawangware, such areas. These are people who go and fend for themselves for the day. And when you tell them buy medication, they have to figure out, I have other kids to feed. And this one also might be sick also. I need to take them to hospital. So do I buy medication? Do I buy food? Do I cater for their rent? Do I cater for their education? It's very expensive.
Okay, Daktari, as Joanne is saying, some conditions, the medication is found freely in government institutions. Even ARVs are free. So why not sickle cell? Where have we dropped the ball here?
So one thing that needs to be very clear is that cost of care in Kenya is quite prohibitive. The costs are quite high, and sicklers unfortunately have not been left out. The reason why certain medications are given freely in this country, such as HIV, TB, is because we have external donors who are heavily involved in funding some of those disease entities. And so care is almost given freely, to the extent that patients have even thought it is a right actually to have that kind of care. While you have other diseases that are not naturally supported through such processes, and that is where the Kenyan government should have actually come on board, so that then care is uniformly provided. So if you look at what patients pay, truthfully speaking, I think from my own estimations, is on the lower side. If you look at a cost of 20,000 per month, is actually not even for complete care. A lot of times we don't prescribe all the drugs that would be appropriate for a sickler. There are other aspects that we are not even monitoring for sicklers. And so if we were to package care appropriately, the cost per month would actually come, per year, sorry, would actually come to between 350 to 400,000. That would be ideal, care using the conventional methods that we know. We think we can taper those costs by bringing them further down when we improve and change the modalities of care. There are procedures and processes that are relatively cheaper, much safer, with less complications. If you look at red cell exchange that I did talk about, and actually it's not the same as bone marrow transplants, which I'll possibly mention. Red cell exchange, the cost, that can last for 3 months is about 80,000. That's a 3-month cost. So in a year, you're spending about 240,000. And this is a cost that can be absorbed by the National Health Insurance Fund. What is missing is that the fund actually needs to review, its priority areas, so that then some of these modes of care can actually be incorporated and also made readily available, in our treatment facilities. As I did mention, it is just a matter of, you know, developing capacity in various areas. We know where the disease burden is. We also know that if we were to push ourselves as a country, we can actually make care a lot better. We do not have capacity to do bone marrow transplants in this country. Why is another issue. I think we are politicking more than concentrating on the real issues. Tanzania, as we are discussing, has a bone marrow transplant in Muhimbili. Now, again, between Kenya and Tanzania, really, who should be having this kind of facility? I'm not trying to say Tanzanians are inferior, but Tanzanians have made headways. They are progressing. They are moving. And care has been moved to the next level. If most of our patients who would qualify for bone marrow transplants, for example, were accorded such kind of treatment, then we would be talking of less problems, less complications, better quality of life. And I know the cost of bone marrow transplants are not cheap. But we've seen Kenyans traveling out of this country to seek such services out of, you know, the country. But if we brought them here, you know, the costs would certainly go down. The cost of a bone marrow transplant out of Kenya is about 3.5 million. Now, how many Kenyans will afford that? But again, we can bring that down. And you know, it would be easier to look for donors for the stem cells. You know, transplanting here would have been a lot easier. And so, if we truly wanted to improve care for our patients, we can actually bring in services locally here. We need also to strengthen research in this country. Kenya is endowed with researchers, very capable researchers. You know, I know some of them locally here, and we should be engaging on different aspects of research that can inform and improve care. So all these are aspects that we cannot delink from the other. And I feel for these patients because a lot of times they have to, you know, cough this money from their pockets. And this is not easy. And as I did mention, you know, if we don't take care of this disease, then the obvious is that complications will set in, and obviously, you know, lives will be lost unnecessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, these are harsh realities, but at least it's being put out there so that the stakeholders can do what needs to be done and give a quality of life for those living with sickle cell disease. Thank you to Joe, Gladys, Joanne, and of course, Peter and Dr. Kibet here, even as we understood what sickle cell disease is and the impact of the same for those living with this condition. Now, time for me to bid you farewell. Tomorrow, we take a look at those humble beginnings and the treasures in them. You remember when you were starting off, the struggles that you had to deal with, or even starting off and life dealt you a hard blow. But out of those circumstances, you're better for it today. We talk about that and actually exemplify some of those experiences tomorrow on Your World. See you then.